Hey Hex. Okay, so you're not really liking your drawings much. Oh, that's too bad. I think they are getting better, so, that's okay. I mean, it's normal, I should say. You've been struggling to finish anything, okay? You think the drawing is bad, you can't seem to figure out how to save it. Okay, we'll try and figure that out together. Structuring anatomy has a lot to do with it. But you also feel like your compositions are weak. You tried thigh-up images because it's easier to frame, but you still think they have less interest than the artists you look up to. And a good chunk is their drawing skill, but any compositional tips would be nice. Okay, so these are the artists you referenced, and then these are your images. Okay, so I would say like this one's pretty strong of the three, and then these two are a bit weaker. As I said, I do think you are improving, but yeah, you're right. There are structural things that can be worked on. And I feel like composition and coloring and all that, like, that comes after structure and anatomy and things like that. But I also know everyone's a bit different. So, you know, some people, if you force them to work super hard on structure, they might just lose their interest in creating altogether. So that's what I'm kind of afraid of, is to tell someone like, hey, you need to just draw and figure out your anatomy and structure and stuff first. Because I don't want you to, you know, just like lose interest in drawing. So let's look at what we can see. So one of the things I noticed with all of the ones you've picked is, do you notice how there is this separation between the light side and the shadow side? In this case, it's really not going across the form really correctly, but it is this, like, it's very cool how there's like light side and shadow side. And then within the shadow, everything's kind of like very close. And then within the light, everything's close in value and stuff like that. So you get this like really definitive, almost flat separation between the two. It's almost cell shaded. I guess like this one is a little more rendered than some of the others, but generally it's almost like it's cell shaded, but then within, yeah, there is some like very subtle value changes and stuff to indicate the forms, but they are very subtle. Whereas in yours, see how here we don't have this clear separation between the light and the shadow? It's almost like too smooth in how it goes, and then within the light and within the shadow, there's a lot more variation than in these, where it's really like almost flat. See, you get like these large flat areas. So that's one of the things. Let's just go through all of them, I guess, and see some small things that we can fix. So I do think the facial structure is having a lot of issues. And it's making the side of the face a bit weird. So if we look at this part of the face in particular, okay, this part, right? You've got like this shape and this thing. It still feels like you're thinking about shapes you've seen, but not really understanding what all these shapes mean. And so when you draw, things are kind of all over the place. So for instance, the mouth is sort of angled in that direction, the eyes are angled that way, but then the rest of the head is like angled. They're all angled in different directions. So I'll show you kind of how I would think about these things. So you've got a space for the eyes. Now, this is the cheek, right? And this is the eye socket part. So this part comes around like this, then we go in for where the eye is. And actually, if you look on the side of the head, let's say these are basic planes of a head. We got the temple here. We got the eye sockets here, the nose, the mouth, chin, cheeks. I'm using a more angular face so it's easier to see the transitions that I'm talking about, but the same thing would apply on pretty much any face. So you've got this part where you got the eye sockets and then the eyeballs within this area. And then you've got the cheek. It comes like this way, and then it goes around and back. So we're going like this way, then we start turning, and we start going back towards the ear. All right. And then you have this temple part that comes around. You have the side of the head here. And then this actually comes around like this, where you can see here, let me just shade in where the eye socket is. You can see how this temple goes like around and then it goes back. But this part of the head actually comes out a bit more than this temple. Now you won't fully see it here, but you can kind of feel it. And this part of the cheekbone is in front, but then you do have this area. So this part comes out, but then you kind of have this. So what that does is it kind of changes the contour of this to be a lot smoother. But that doesn't mean everything's on the same plane. Like, you still have a lot of plane changes here. But this is where we get these shapes from. So you have this like muzzle shape for the mouth going around like that. And then you have this area as we go around sort of like in line with the chin. But then this part here is like this section here is actually here, which is quite a bit further back than here. So they look really close, right? Like this is the below the nose. You get like this philtrum area. Like this looks really close to this, right? Like, hey, these are really close. But you have to think of it like this part. Like, I mean, this part and this part are the same part. So this is actually quite a bit further back. Then it comes around. And then because you've got like, you've got bone underneath, and then you've got all this like muscle and fat and skin that smooth out the transitions between this bone. You get these very like soft transitions. So when you get to drawing, you know, cute anime girls, everything's really smoothed out, but you still have all the general structures that you see in, you know, something more structural and angular like this. So all of these things are here. Like you've got the eye sockets, they just be here. You've got the nose, it would be like that. You've got that roundness for the mouth. You've got the way this goes towards the chin here. You've got the where the mouth would be there. You've got this the eyes within the eye sockets. Now, for anime styles, they tend to simplify this and stylize it a bit much, but it's still generally the same principle. eyes there. You get the, well, this one is closed, so that would be coming around like that. You get this nose kind of flowing towards the eyebrow ridge there and there. And then because the eyebrows are raised, they'd be doing this. So you get eyebrow there. This eyebrow is like here, so that would be there. You get that. She's got a very like this cat expression, sure. So she's raising this up. So we get something like this. And then we've got the jaw. So the jaw should be across from the mouth. See how this goes? And we go like from the mouth, we hit this turning point for the jaw. You'd have the same thing here. It's just a lot more smooth. And then the eye is here. And then you've got the center line. So your hair is here, right? And the center is here. But actually, the center should be here. So maybe the hair should be like this, going on top of that form. Same way as if it was on this guy, the center line is here, comes down, and it goes like that, and then it goes for the nose down like that. And if he had this hair, it would be sitting like that on the head. And then so seeing things in 3D and understanding the skull beneath all of this is super, super helpful. So again, I don't want to discourage you from doing the things you like, but I really would, try to encourage you to spend as much time as you can sort of learning all this stuff, the structural parts, and sort of how these work, and then building your figures on top of that once you understand it, because then your things aren't going to look so weird, and you'll understand, like, I know the structure of the ear, so then drawing this is not too hard. Of course, everyone has different ears, but the general structure, I know this is the front plane of the face, and then there's going to be a side plane over here, so that the head is going like this, and then we go down. So here, I know that, okay, if this is the center, and there's a ribbon here, well, the ribbon's going to have some thickness, so let's create like a box. And that's going to be maybe where that thing lies. And then this part here is going to be sitting on the head. Like that. And then this part is, this part here is going to be, more like that. And like that. And then you wouldn't see all of these details. So when we erase all of this, then we get that, typical anime look, but we've got all the structure underneath, which makes it work. We have the back of a head, so the hair is going to be on top. And then we've got this sitting on this body. So where does the neck come from? Is it here? Well, no, because the neck's got to connect from back here, and it comes around like that, and then we've got a thin neck here, so the neck should be around here. So then we've got to move this entire head to fit on top of that body. Okay, and then we probably make that a bit bigger as well, sort of trying to line that with the body. And then we have body, and probably the shoulders would be pretty narrow. Right? So this is the structural issues, right? And then there's a lot of other little things as well. So for instance, with this area, you've got this line here, but that's not how it should go. It should go more like this, because what you're drawing is this muscle, and then you've got these breasts sitting on top of this pectoralis muscle, like that. And we can look at, and you can kind of see here how it's like this direction. Maybe there's a better example. Here we go. See? We've got like this coming around, and then that, not this. So if you think like this, what happens is you're thinking in very flat ways. You're not really imagining the structure underneath, and so you'll get pictures that look flat and feel flat. And so you'll keep feeling like, well, you know, that's not what I wanted to convey. I wanted my things to feel more real, but you need the structure underneath for that to happen. Right? Like you need this central part here, and then the thighs coming from like that. And yes, you can push things and exaggerate, but it's really like you need to know the underlying structure first in order to know how to exaggerate these things. And then like with this hand, you've got it like this and this connecting to this, but that's not telling us how this hand structure works. So what I want to see is I want to see how this little finger is actually connected to this part of the hand, and then this part's behind. And so you get like this overlap. As we come around, we've got like knuckles here, so this comes down and goes like this. Alright, and then you've got another knuckle here, so it's behind, and then another one here. And then we get the finger coming up like that. And you get this, which is good that you got that overlap. Get this. And so it's not too far off, but it's like a little bit. And then this thumb, I'm gonna think of it sort of popping out like that. Right. So then I could erase these parts that overlap. and we get this. And then once you have something like this, then the shading is sort of like breaking things down into what the forms are. So for instance, okay, I know this, like this is sort of rounded, but kind of flat. This is facing up, this is facing down. So then I can do the shading according to that. But if your structure isn't right, it's really hard to do shading and to know like where do things go. And if I do know the structure, then I can do a lot of things. Like I can just like minimize this to something like that even. And it's fine because I know the underlying structure works. That's not to say everyone does this, so there are plenty of artists who don't. I just find that it's very limiting not to have the structure eventually. It just becomes like sort of a guessing game, or sort you've got to really rely on someone who knows what they're doing to copy them in a way when you don't have structure. So, you know, you could be the type who really looks at this and studies it, and it's just like, I don't need to understand everything, but I'm gonna copy this hair strand and, you know, really think about things that way. But I do think it's much better to, you know, look at life and try to figure it out, like make observations, realize like, oh, okay, so this is that muscle, right? So this part of the arm is actually quite a bit behind. So like this shoulder comes out, but then this comes more in front. You get this area where it's a bit more flat here. But then this is going this way and then it comes around, right? Like understanding how these things work in 3 dimensions. Okay, and so basically like all of them have those same issues. For smaller issues, we could do things like, for instance, maybe these aren't so black, these lines. I think I've talked to you about that a bit, but you see how much of a difference it makes when we lighten these? So they're like this, like how soft that looks now. And then you might think, well, that's cool, but it's a bit too soft because now I've lost some of that definition. But you can, you know, really subtly put that back in, like, where's the darker spots? Okay, maybe here. And I've got this feeling of three-dimensionality, where this is like flowing over. And it feels a lot softer, and that's something you'll see in a lot of the references. See how there's not a lot of black lines everywhere. Like maybe it's darker lines on the outside of the form, but on the inside it's very light. See, very light. And that creates that softness. It creates, like here, see how light this is? If you were to draw with black and you were to like outline all these, you're definitely gonna change the look of this. It's not gonna look so pretty anymore. So those are things you want to consider. Is like, hey, I've got to be a lot more subtle and soft with my lighting. But again, this comes after you have the structure, because without that, how do you know where to put the light? You know, what part is gonna get darker? And then we mentioned the shadows being sort of like all one thing. So you could think of this where you get more decisive about where your shadows are, but again, you have to think about the structure then. You know, what is the structure? Otherwise, you're not gonna know what the form is. So when we say structure, the thinking of it is something like, okay, I have a box and light is hitting this box, and I've got areas in shadow and areas in light. And this is a very simple way of drawing it. Whereas, in reality, maybe on this box, there's like a lot of subtle shifts in hue. Maybe some parts are a little more warm and other parts are less saturated, maybe a little colder. And here, maybe you get some subtle adjustments. So it's like, well, there's stuff going on in this in terms of like subtle changes, subtle gradients maybe. But overall, I'm sticking to that simple 3 value structure where we have, I guess you could say these two are more in shadow than this face, but we could also have it the other way where now the top and this are more in the light. And this side's in the shadows. But the important thing is that we recognize like this is a plane, this is a plane, and this is a plane, and that's how I know this is the border between this shadow and this light. If you don't have that here, like if I don't know, well, what is the plane here? Then how do I know what to make this shape? So I would say the plane here is sort of like this, where this part is the side and this is underneath. Now, do you see how when I just make that plane more solid, it's easier to get a sense for where things should go? Like this starts to just immediately look more three-dimensional because our brains know how to interpret it. They'll look at this and they'll say, oh, okay, so this part's, like the form of this is doing this, where this part goes like this and then it curves and goes down. Well, how do we know that? Because this is all basically one value and this is another value. So this must be in shadow. So it must be like turning away from the light. So we say, oh, so that must be doing that. And then as I draw these lines on top, it only enhances that feeling, right? Now, if I did something like this, where I get some of the light and I do this beside, now what I'm saying to the viewer is, hey, there's like a crease, there's like an indent where we go around and then we dip in and then come out and then go around like that. Because I've shown that light is hitting here and that's a surface away from this shadow, meaning that this is doing that, right? So these are the types of things that it helps to know, but once you know them, then you can do your structural things of like, okay, all this is going to be one plane, right? And then you get that simplicity that you're looking for because you kind of know what's going on. You know, maybe this part is more in shadow because we're turning the corner. Like now I'm saying that the form by drawing this is doing this. We go this way and then we're going back that way. Like this is a cylinder. So if I wanted this art to feel like that, I can do the same thing. I can say, okay, so this is like the same direction as this, which is pointing that way. And this is the same direction as this, which is pointing that way. And then between them, there's like some gradient because we're, transitioning and then that feels three-dimensional. We can say like, well, this part seems like light would have a hard time getting in here, so I can add like a darker value for the shadow. And then that's gonna start to feel like this is deeper and this is like popping out. And you can see how like 3D this is starting to feel. If I said, well, this casts a shadow on top of this surface, and I do something like this, again, I'm combining these shadow areas to say, okay, this is roughly the same value. And again, we get this heightened 3D sense of things. So this is one value, and maybe this is one value. And I think this is what you're looking for, like how to get like this type of look to stuff. So when I look at this, it's like, well, this part is facing down, and this part is facing down. So these are kind of facing the same direction, so they should be relatively the same value. And now this looks like it's facing that way, and again, it feels a lot more three-dimensional. But if I think of it just like I've drawn a face and then I've drawn hair and everything's very flat, then things are confusing, like this as well, right? Like this feels flat. I don't feel like this is on a rounded structure, but the way I would think about it as a rounded thing is to say, okay, this is generally a cone, something like this. We're coming around like that, okay? So we've got this cone shape. Okay, now on this, we're gonna have these things going around. So as you get around the edge, the width of this is going to appear to shrink. So this is like that wide, right? But then this is only that wide, because this is turning and it's more foreshortened. But then when we do this, where it's like, okay, so let's take that as one piece, that is one piece, this is one piece, that is one piece, and then I'm gonna keep getting, you know, they're wider here, and it gets more narrow, and then I can erase the initial cone guideline. But now that feels three-dimensional. So I would make like this part black, and then this part yellow, and then this part black, and then that part yellow, like here, and this would be black, and this would be yellow, and then this would be black. So now this is feeling three-dimensional, and then we can put all of this area into shadow because it's not getting as much light. And then this hair is sort of blocking some of the light, so some of that gets into shadow. And then there's a curve to a cone, right? So if we rendered a cone like this, you're gonna get some of it in shadow and some of it in light, something like this. And then this part is gonna be in shadow, like that. We've got this very basic cone thing. So the same thing would apply here. So this area would be facing away from the light, and so that would get in shadow the same way this is in shadow. Get a stronger core shadow, and same on this side because it's doing the same thing. And so now this is starting to feel three-dimensional, and this is why it's important to get all those basic structural things down, where, you know, everything is just made up of simple shapes, because once you break it down that way, then all this works. You could say, okay, well, this hair is coming around like this, but it's on the structure. This is a front plane, like this. Eyes. Right. And the same is true for this, so I'm not gonna spend too much time, but I think you'll get the idea of what I would do. Like, okay, the head needs structure. Is this making structural sense, or did you just draw it? Like, did you draw the underlying structure of this first? Did you understand the underlying structure? Or did you just start kind of getting shapes down? So once you understand the forms, then you could move straight to shapes and things like that, but it's something where I get that because I understand the structure. So yeah, see, we're missing some of the shoulder here, because if the shoulder is going out this far, then this side should be more further out, because this is foreshortened backwards, right? Like the collarbones here. You have the chest here. So I like to think with chests, I like to think about no breasts first. Just imagine you're drawing like a guy or a woman with very small breasts. And then, where's the center line? And then add on top, you know, this fat sitting on this surface. And in this case, they're pressed together. That's fine. But it's on top of this surface that you've already created. And then for the hands, you know, make sure when you draw the hands, I don't know if you're doing this, but draw the whole arm without any clothes on. And then you'll see, you know, where the hands should connect. Same with this, you know, draw the arm, get the hand. You might need to do hand studies for this. You might need to, again, like, don't just draw hands for the sake of it, but I think when studies are important, it's when you know, I've got a problem and I want to solve it and I'm not sure what the solution is. Okay, let me look at my own hands, or look at hands and see what is actually going on. You might need to draw a lot of hands before it clicks. Be thinking of this. And then for the composition, that's kind of like, once you get the structure in, the composition idea changes a bit, because now you've got like a different structural problem, right? So when the structure is correct, then where I choose to move this gives me a different look. But if your structure isn't right, you might be fighting it, where you're like, well, okay, do I need to put like the body here for a different composition? Should it go here? Should it go here? It's like, well, you're not sure, because it's always going to look wrong because there's a structural problem. But when the structure is right, then maybe you can think more about, okay, maybe I want it like this. And I don't think the composition's really, bad at all. I think it's more the structure. See, if I wanted to give her like big hair, and that needed to be in the scene, then the composition would change. Right? She's holding something and that needs to go here, then that's all part of the composition. Maybe if there's like a flow this way, like that might feel nice, and then you have, okay, let's have the clothing sort of do this type of thing, or I don't know, whatever, but like it all depends, but having the structure underneath working is really helpful. And feel free, like, to trace over the images you like. If you're struggling with figuring out these structures, you can just do this where you just, okay, I'm gonna make a layer and I'm going to draw directly on top of this. It doesn't mean you post this. It doesn't mean like you show the world, hey, this is what I'm doing, but this is for your own understanding. Like, oh, the nose is here, the mouth is here, oh, it's really small, okay. The basic structure. Oh, okay, so this is the basic structure. How big is the neck? Where's the shoulders go? Where are the shoulders going, right? Where's the collarbones? What is this structure? You might see mistakes. Like, hey, that navel is pretty high up. Probably put it more like there, but whatever. And then you can build your knowledge base by looking at people who are doing it, but it's not bad to learn from reality first and to understand that no matter how exaggerated things are, they're still based on reality at some point. So even in this case, you know, we still have a center line that's going like this. We still have all this lining up. You know, they did do this. There are places where it deviates. The ears are... Oh, that's fine. Sorry, I was confusing the ear with the earring. I thought, oh, those are a bit weird. But no, it's fine. See, you do have things sort of coming out from this structure underneath. You have this basic body doing this. So yeah, it can be useful too to draw over the things you like as well. You know, not everyone might benefit from it, but if it helps, you know, there's no shame in doing it. Just don't post it. Don't show this as your work, but use it as a way of like sort of absorbing the artists that you like and what they're doing. All right, so good work. I hope this helps, and thanks for watching.